Good evening, local warriors. I'm Dana Zulik, and welcome to tonight's episode of Local Wars. Um, I really tried to do it on Saturday, but life happens, and here we are. I have a toothache tonight, but it's getting fixed tomorrow. But we'll make it through it. I just took some ibuprofen, so hopefully it keeps working. So, I've been getting good reviews from everybody so far. About this channel. It feels a little weird still. I mean, it's new to me. It's something I got to get comfortable with. And the best way to do it is just pretend like I'm just sitting around talking to my friends, just like I would anybody else. I try to just be candid and honest and share with you my experience from my perspective and doing the best I can, as I always say, to use critical thinking. Um, So tonight we're going to talk about the boundary dispute, and a lot of things surround the boundary dispute. So basically, my property is 40 acres, and to the south, there is a neighbor who owns another property, and we share a boundary line. And very early on, they claimed that the southern driveway to our property was theirs, half of it was theirs. And well, anyways, I think videos are a really good way to start too. So why don't we start with a video? And I'll just kind of show you how another example of the lengths that my neighbors, along with the local government here in the village of Richfield in Wisconsin, like to be very invasive. And so I think it has to do with boundaries. And I haven't shown it yet on this channel. So let's just start with that and we'll go from there. Okay, here we go. It's probably the best way. Here we go.
She caught neighbors trying to spy on her property.
They said, we heard noise. We want to see what you're doing.
They wanted to know what was going on at this abandoned quarry known around Richfield as the Scenic Pit.
They couldn't get in to see because every time they tried, I would tell them to leave.
Zulik and her husband planned to restore the land and build homes on it, and that meant for years they would need to operate the site as a sort of landfill.
There's clean fill that needs to go somewhere, and there's places like our place that needs the clean fill.
Concerned about truck traffic and potential groundwater contamination, neighbors formed a group called Richfield Residents Against the Dump. And in July, one of the group's members sent up a drone, like this one, to get a look at what was going on inside.
Because they can't see the quarry, they flew up and around and over.
This video was posted on the group's website, and the drone pilot emailed a link to the village of Richfield, which was embroiled in a lawsuit with Zulik over the quarry.
The court will admit that the issue was close.
While a Washington County judge did rule against Zulik, the drone video had nothing to do with it. It never actually captured anything of consequence. But to Zulik, that's not the point.
You want to talk about being pissed? I'm pissed!
She's angry that the group she had every right to block at ground level went quite literally over her head.
Tell me why a private citizen that I know nothing about can just fly a drone over my property without permission.
The drone pilot is a Richfield resident named Stephen Mahler, who did not respond to multiple requests for an interview. In an email to the village of Richfield, he said he only flies his drone for recreational purposes, period.
This wasn't just recreational flying of drones.
So Zulik complained to the Washington County Sheriff's Department, which told her there was nothing they could do because no individual person had their privacy violated.
I said, so the next time I see a drone, I will be running naked through my pit.
The FAA could not determine if Mahler had violated any specific regulations, but it did send him an educational letter outlining the important distinction between flying a drone for recreational use or some other purpose.
All right, here we go.
While drone technology is still relatively new, the market for drones.
Okay, now I'm gonna go to the end of it because you can always go see
Isn't
it. It was
just
a
taking
Fox
off,
6
it's
investigation.
soaring and private businesses.
If you got It's a patchwork.
Cities and counties are at least 3 of them. The airspace is all public domain feet. Are we getting any
Really go.
closer? What about 100 feet? Is that high enough yet? What about 200 feet? Or just how high does your property line go? In Wisconsin, there is no law specific to private property. Instead, the Badger State has taken a different approach.
It's a very loose standard.
Last year, Governor Walker signed a law that makes it a crime to use a drone to record another person in a place where they have a reasonable expectation of privacy, a definition that's not yet clearly defined.
Front yard versus backyard, front porch versus back porch.
But the law only focuses on recording a person.
Did I go to the wrong side?
And that's why Zuluk recently went to Madison.
Hi. Hi. How are you?
To meet with lawmakers.
It only protects you if they actually video you.
She wants something on the books that protects private property from aerial trespassing.
I'm hoping that they put stricter laws on drone activity.
Just because the aircraft can do it doesn't necessarily mean that you should do it.
Peter Minette just hopes
That was a Fox 6 Investigates video from the earlier stages. I'm not sure if they even said the date. Was that 2016, 2017, maybe? I'm not sure. But anyways, just kind of wanted to give you a little video about, because it was a story that was covered in the news quite a bit. So going back to the actual boundary dispute, I could not find the video. I had initially when all of this started with the neighbor. It was like Thanksgiving weekend, and I think in 2017 it was. Well, we're gonna go over the transcripts. Maybe it'll say the actual date in there, but yeah, they sawed my culvert in half and started to put in stakes to mark their boundary. And so we're just gonna go over this whole thing from beginning to end as best as I can. Um, so let's start with an aerial view. I got this off the Washington County GIS map. And I find it really fascinating. Like, if you zoom in and you look, you see right at the bottom of the screen, right above where it says please subscribe, you see that yellow line there. Well, this aerial photograph is from before the pit was ever mined. And I should have put the date on it when I took the screenshot. I believe, don't quote me, I believe it was 1960 because as you can see, the quarry was already being mined. If you look on the right-hand part of the photo across Scenic Road, the quarry was already being mined over there. They just hadn't come across the street yet, to this side, to the west side of Scenic Road. But you can very clearly see that there is a driveway to the south, and that driveway goes directly to the barn. So that building down there is the barn, and then the top driveway is to the house. So it was very common back in rural areas, for this exact thing to happen. The family would live in the house, and then they would lease the barn out to farmers or, have some sort of agriculture, run a bit small business, whatever it may be that they were doing. Very common. Um, but yeah, you could see it hadn't been mined yet. It was a farm field. I think it's fascinating history lesson. So that was, I believe, 1960. Let's see if I. Okay, so I believe this is in the 1970s, and then this is now. Well, back in maybe 13, 2015, but more modern, more current. Not since we started filling. This is before we started accepting fill. But you can very clearly see that that driveway is there even when the mining was there. So the driveway is still there. That's how it is. That's always been part of this properties. You can see there's a mature tree line, and there's even uh, like fieldstone. Yeah, there you go. Fieldstone fence. So there's like fieldstone, there's barbed wire growing through mature trees. We've got aerial views of this property having this driveway for decades. um, you know, and it's harder to see right here, but that driveway is still there. It's just more wooded over time. So I pointed this out numerous times, and the neighbors are like, there's a stake in the middle of the driveway. And I'm like, but right, but there's adverse possession. There's, oh, I believe the neighbors got a permit from the village to build the fence. Right. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. But thank you. That keeps me on track. Um, and we're getting to that actually. We're gonna get to that when we're going through the transcripts at the trial, and you can hear from my neighbor himself. Um, how the village of Richfield again intimidated him, according to him. I'm not quite sure. I think it sounds silly and it kind of sounds a little made up, but he did testify under oath that the village of Richfield, um, through the administrator Jim Healy and attorney John Macy, met at John Macy's office in Waukesha and basically threatened my neighbor with a lawsuit because I illegally, according to them, the courts did not ever find me guilty of it, but according to the village, I installed a culvert improperly. And so they told the Petrozzadis that they were gonna sue them. And so instead, the Petrozzadis decide to sell my culvert in half and stake their claim with the stakes. Cool. The whole thing was really bizarre. And I think I told it in another episode, but it was one of those moments in court where my attorney literally leans over and whispers to me, he's like, "Well, this will be good for your 1983 case." Like, why is the village of Richfield putting their noses in a private boundary dispute? And then basically triggering this whole thing to happen. And I know that my neighbors spent tens of thousands of dollars because the law firm they hired was a very good law firm. Well, maybe not that. I mean, hopefully they told them they didn't really have a good chance of winning. Um, Hopefully they gave them the truth, and I would like to think they did. I don't have any reason to believe that the law firm the neighbors hired, isn't reputable. And I'm assuming they told them, "Well, yeah, you might have a survey that shows a stake marker or whatever based on math, but the reason for adverse possession laws, the reason they exist is because we didn't have instruments like that when the settlers came and, this is your basic 40-acre parcel." It's and, they put up their fences, they treated boundary lines for what they were, and it's been recognized for that for over, like well, we could prove in court at least since 1950. I think there's aerial views from the '40s even, but we're gonna go through all of that. So let's go ahead and start with the decision from the court. I don't know which view is the easiest to see. We'll go with this since I'm gonna be reading it anyways. This is so fun, I can't wait to read. Reading is fun. Okay, well, it's not gonna work for me to read it from my screen right here, so let me is that a little better? Is that oh, okay. Decision and order for judgment. So this is there a date? Filed 12/16 of 2019. Okay. Now keep in mind all of, the video I showed of the horses running all over the village on CBS 58, that that all happened in January of 2020. So it was in this decision came down and the tickets started within a couple days of this decision, because my fence was destroyed in 3 places. So just wanted to kind of on a timeline put all my viewers on how this all happens. Okay. So decision and order for judgment. This is a boundary dispute case. A trial to the court was held over 2 days, July 9th and 10th of 2019. At a July 11th, 2019 telephone conference, the attorneys agreed on a briefing schedule which was reduced to a written order. Pursuant to the order, the plaintiffs filed 2 post-trial briefs. The defendants filed 2 post-trial briefs. The court thanks the attorneys for the briefs. A complete transcript of the trial has been filed, and we reference and was referenced by both sides in the briefs. The court received 29 exhibits, including photographs and surveys. The court adopts the statement of facts in defendant's first brief, pages 2 through 5. Adopting the terminology of the attorneys in their briefs, the plaintiffs is sometimes referred to collectively in this decision as Petrozzati's and the defendants as Zuliks. Where the trial court is the finder of fact, as in the instant case, the judge is the determiner of the credibility of all of the witnesses. And then they cite a bunch of case law. The determination of credibility is a matter within the court's jurisdiction or court's discretion. Courts may consider evidence other than contradictory testimony when finding testimony credible. Well, it says incredible. More case law. When the trial court acts as the finder of facts, it is the ultimate arbiter of the credibility of the witnesses and the weight to be given to their testimony. When evidence supports the drawing of either of 2 conflicting but reasonable inferences, the trial court must decide which inference to draw. More case law. Reference is also made to Wisconsin jury instruction. The same list of 9 factors that are to be considered by a jury as to credibility of witnesses apply to a judge in a trial to the court. For example, I need a bigger screen to read this on, but that's okay. The cleanness or lack of cleanness of the witness reflections. The opportunity the witness had for observing and for knowing the matters the witness testified about, and the reasonableness of the witness's testimony. Credibility determinations must be made by the court as to so-called expert witnesses, such as the 2 surveyors who testified in this case. Usually, witnesses can testify only to the facts they know, but a witness with expertise in a calling specialty may give an opinion in that calling or specialty. In determining the weight to be given an opinion, you should consider the qualifications and credibility of the expert and whether reasons for their opinion or the opinion are based on facts in the case. Opinion evidence was admitted in the case to help you reach a conclusion. You are not bound by any expert's opinion. In this case, the dwelling surveyors are in agreement in the title survey lines, but have other differences. The Zuliks have the burden of proof. The ordinary civil burden of proof applies. The lowest of the 3 burdens by the group weight. I'm going to switch over to this actual thing because I am here. Let me try that. Oh, geez, Dana, why didn't we just you guys could see what I'm seeing on my computer side. There's a way to make this make way more sense. I'm sitting here like I'm trying to read it and okay, now I'm back to business. In this case, the dueling surveyors are in agreement on the title survey lines but have other differences. The Zuliks have the burden of proof. The ordinary civil burden of proof applies. The lowest of the 3 burdens by the greater weight of the credible evidence to a reasonable certainty. Credible evidence means evidence the trier of fact believes in light of reason and common sense. Reasonable certainty means that the trier of fact is persuaded beyond a rational consideration of the evidence. Absolute certainty is not required, but a guess is not enough to meet the burden of proof. So, Zuliks have the burden to prove adverse possession and also, of course, to prove their alleged damages counterclaim. The law on adverse possession, as it applies to this case, is concisely and adequately briefed by the attorneys for the defendants. The court determines and finds that the testimony of the surveyor for the Zuliks, David H. Jacob, is more credible than the surveyor for Petrozades. Jacob actually physically did the survey work himself. Rick Hillman, the Petrozades surveyor, did not do so. He had assistants do the work and first saw the area shortly before the trial. Now, on a little side note, it was really weird because I literally had a deputy. He's like, Dana, you act like you're just going to win cases all the time. Like, he was like literally snarky with me with that kind of tone. He's like, but, you know, you didn't know you're going to win. He's like, I heard it was just a battle of the experts. Well, I guess you could say it was a battle of the experts because my expert actually did like the other expert was like, yeah, it was too hilly. I didn't really go back there. I mean, sure, it's a battle of the expert, but it's also the truth. And I did not think there was a chance I would lose this case. I was very confident based on current case law. So we're just going to keep going. Jacob's testimony with regard to an old fence line was more convincing. Jacob provided an actual legal description, Exhibit D22, Exhibit E, of what the litigants are calling the disputed parcel or disputed portion. Surveyor Hillman agreed that Exhibit D22 is an accurate legal description of what is shown on Exhibit D8. Similarly, the court does find the testimony of Richard Holtz, who with his sister sold to the Zuliks, to be credible and does find that there indeed is and was an ancient fence line. His testimony is the most significant non-expert testimony in the trial. He was born in 1944 and was and is familiar with the land, which was in his family for 4 generations. The case law demonstrates that the resolution of boundary disputes depends on fact-specific analysis. Here are a few snippets, just samples of his testimony, questioning by Attorney Vanderloop, which is my attorney. Question: is it fair to say that you're familiar with the property at 609 Scenic Road, the Zulik property? Oh, yes, I grew up there. Okay, and you interacted, strike that. When you're growing up, you would have daily interactions with your parents? Yes. You would have known where they considered the boundary lines to be? Yes. Were your grandparents alive when when you were young? Yes. Would you have known where they considered the boundary lines to be? Well, I'm assuming that they would thought it was where the line fence is. There was nothing to the contrary. And another example. Do you ever recall any neighbor throughout your childhood and prior to Mr. Kaiser claiming that they owned anything north of the fence? No. And had there been a boundary dispute going on with your family from the time, say, you were 12 on forward, would you know about it based on your interactions with your parents? Yes. Another example relating how he showed the boundaries to Tom and Dana Zulik about the time it was sold to the Zuliks. Question. Okay, and at some point, strike that. And where did you show Mr. Zulik the property line was? Answer. Where? Well, we walked the entire 3 sides. Of course, the road is the 4th side, but we walked around the whole farm. Um, on a side note, guys, that was when the lady whose children go to school with my children, that that was literally the time that she came like running at us. You can't be out of there on a trail, and we're like literally trying to figure out the boundary, like calm. Um, and by this point, what does the line fence on the southern boundary look like? It was about the way as it is appears now. It was rock piles and then existing pieces of barbed wire. Were you able to discern where the fence was? Yes. Okay. Again, what was most convincing to my mind was the fact that there were trees. They were 2 feet, 3 inches or so across with barbed wire sticking out of both sides. Another example. For the period of time you own the property and before, do you ever recall anybody claiming ownership of the land that is to the north of the line fence other than your family? No. Based on your 75 years of experience with the property as you sit here today, where do you believe the southern boundary is of the Scenic Drive property 609? It's the line fence, the stone line fence. The best evidence of the boundary line the court does find is the testimony of Richard Holtz. There were no closing documents from any relevant sales introduced into evidence by either side. For example, no boundary affidavits from real estate closings or title insurance policies showing coverage and exceptions. The court, in summary, does find and determine that the Zuliks have met their burden of proof as to adverse possession under 893.25 of the Wisconsin statutes. Number one, an action for the recovery or the possession of real estate and a defense or counterclaim based on a title to real estate are barred by uninterrupted adverse possession of 20 years. A person who, in connection with his or her predecessors in interest, is in uninterrupted adverse possession of real estate for 20 years may commence an action to establish title under Chapter 841. 2. Real estate is possessed adversely under this subsection A only if the person possessing it in connection with his or her predecessors in interest continued occupation is an actual continued occupation under claim of title exclusive of any other right, and B only to the extent that it is actually occupied and 1 protected by a substantial enclosure, or 2 usually cultivated or improved. The court adopts the reasoning on pages 7 and 8 of Zulick's first brief and pages 3 through 5 of Zulick's second brief, construing this Wisconsin adverse possession statute. The court does find that the 20-year threshold was met, that there was continuous use, and that the possession was open, hostile, and notorious. The Wisconsin legislature, tongue twisted with tooth pain. The Wisconsin legislature makes the rules, not the judges. The circuit court judges, the judges of the lowest general jurisdiction courts in the state, must follow those rules. It is up to the legislature to set the policy, not the courts. Judges are like umpires. Umpires don't make the rules, they apply them. It is a limited role. John Roberts, current U.S. Supreme Court Chief of Justice, opening statement before Senate Judiciary Committee, September 12th of '05. In reality, our proper judicial role is one of restraint and defense. Our form of government provides for one legislature, not two. Village of Richfield. Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Annette Kingsland Ziegler, internal citation omitted. It is also necessary to address the damages counterclaim of the defendants. That total claim is in the amount of 14,150, including therein 10,410 in exemplary damages, and rests on the testimony of Dana Zulick. No opposing evidence was offered by the plaintiffs on the subject of pecuniary damages. The claims are based on trespass, civil and criminal damage to property. The testimony of a witness under oath is indeed evidence. The Zulick's pecuniary claim is based on Dana Zulick's verbal estimates of repairs that have yet to be undertaken. Very little money was actually spent by the Zulicks by the time of the trial. The court exercises its discretion to estimate and set the damages at $2,500. I mean, I showed them the video and they admitted under oath they damaged the culvert. I probably didn't bring in estimates. I don't. It was more about the boundary dispute. I am glad that they were held accountable for the damages too, because I mean, if you're going to come over and saw my culvert in half, perhaps, I mean, they didn't even get a ticket. I think I was joking about that one time. I'm like, they're sawing her culvert in half. Oh my God, Dana Zulick's chicken. Hurry, give her a ticket for $500. These people, they're sawing a culvert in half. That's normal. That's not weird at all, guy. Totally normal. The testimony as to alleged pecuniary, why can't I say that word? Damages is at time confusing, but there are damages, and this is the court's best estimate of same based on the record that was made. No exemplary punitive damages will be awarded and none are justified. under 895-446 of the Wisconsin statutes. Because the court is deciding this case based on adverse possession, the contentions with regard to prescriptive easement will not need to be addressed and are not addressed herein. They're kind of moot. There are old line fences like this all over Washington County. Questioning of Surveyor Jacobs by Attorney Vanderloop. And you have encountered fences that aren't exactly on the title line in your survey? Yes. How common is that in rural Wisconsin? Very common. These line fences, regardless of the results of specific cases like this in courtrooms, are a tribute, a memorial to the historic 19th century pioneers to Wisconsin who exhausted themselves, women and men, spent their lives clearing the land for dairy farming and other farming. This case was carefully, civilly, and professionally presented by both sides, but in reality, it is not a close case. Accordingly, it is hereby ordered that the attorney for the Zuliks prepare a judgment consistent with and implementing this decision, awarding to the Zuliks the disputed parcel portion as described in Exhibit D22, together with money damages in the amount of $2,500, said judgment to be filed electronically in the usual fashion. Dated at West Bend, Wisconsin. So there you have it. How do I get out of this? Help. Did I do it right? Okay. So there you have it. That was the boundary dispute case and the decision. So it was quite the experience, I still wish I had that video, but let's go over some of this testimony here. And now I'm going to tie in the Village of Richfield and John Macy, the Village of Richfield attorney, through municipal law and litigation. And this is under oath testimony by Doug Petrosates. Make sure I'm on the right page. Okay, let's see. Okay, so here Doug Petrosates is admitting he sees a culvert going in. But he never really looked around to see if there was a culvert to begin with, which there was. We were replacing an old culvert. I went through that in another episode. It's geeky. It's basically if you have like an old culvert, you can replace it if it's not completely dead. There's all these rules, but we were also, well, we'll leave that for another day. Okay. Did you ever go for the purposes of looking? I've never been in the driveway to notice a culvert, so I never thought, gee. So this is from Doug Petrosates. I never thought, gee, I should really go make sure there isn't a culvert. And then if we can rotate the view here, but this should be Exhibit 17. This is another picture you took? Yes, yes. And what exactly do we see in this picture? Did I start at the wrong place? I did, guys. I'm sorry. I had this all ready to go. I seriously did. I promise. And then I lost my spot. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Bear with me, guys. Here, I'll play something interesting for you while you wait. We can watch me trying to do the open records request again with Jim Healy. I'm finished filling those.
Thanks.
Do you have my records?
No.
Are you planning on getting them to me today?
I'm sorry?
Are you planning on giving them to me today?
As soon as practical and without delay. Thank you.
Which is what? I was still talking. You always just walk away when your customers are talking? He left. I'll take that as a no. Well, I'll be. I can't get enough of that video. It cracks me up. Okay, I did find out though. So we get to go to 165. Like transcripts are a lot of pages. Okay. Okay, so Doug saw the culvert going in, and he admits not seeing the gate going in. So this is his attorney, I believe, asking him these questions. Did you see a gate being installed at the disputed portion? No, I never saw the gate going in. And it seems like it was months later when they put the gate up. When you say months later, what time frame are you in, please? It might have been the following spring, summer, possibly. When you say following spring or summer, what year would that be? Well, 2017. Well, there you go. There we have it, 2017. Did there come a time where you had a meeting with the village about the culvert? Yes. Well, so I went to report it and I said was there a permit given? And they said no. So they had me write an actual complaint, written complaint about it. And they were going to look into it. And a year later we met myself, you and Olivia with the village administrator, Jim Healy, and John Macy, who was the village attorney. Let's go over that real quick. And they were going to look into it. And Doug Petrozzati says, and a year later we met myself, you and Olivia. He's talking to his own attorney here with the village administrator, Jim Healy, and John Macy, who was the village attorney. Is. And where did that meeting take place? It was at John Macy's office in Waukesha. Was your wife Cheryl present? No. Were any of the defendants present? No. Well, we can't come to secret meeting. How do I get okay, I keep asking. It's never going to happen, Dana. Give up. Give up. Jim Healy's not going to have a special meeting with you. And what was the purpose of that meeting? Their idea was that they were their idea. I mean, isn't this it is or it isn't? I mean, this is outrageous. Okay. Their idea was that they were going to give us or they were going to send a lawsuit to us, meaning Cheryl and I, and to Ms. Zulik about the culvert being on both properties and not having a permit for it. So they were going to send a lawsuit saying that. What was the discussion about the permit during that meeting? Well, that there was no permit to put in this culvert. And even though we had nothing to do with it, they said, "Well, if it's on your property, we have to give you the lawsuit for the part that's on your property." Does that sound weird to anybody else on here? Like, you're just reading la la la, it's boring, boring, boring. And like, but picture what it was like sitting there for me. And we're listening to this, and my attorney's like, like, what? Or we're in the twilight zone now, guys. Twilight, we're like, oh my God. Like, literally, that happened. So wait, let's analyze this because I know it happened, and I'm still convinced they were like saw the culvert in half, right? I mean, he didn't testify that they actually sawed it in half, but what they did was they're admitting to this collusion. What business is it of the village of Richfield at this point that we're having a boundary dispute? And we'd already keep in mind we were at the Court of Appeals. We had just won in 2017. We won at the Court of Appeals against the village of Richfield. And that's when this incident of the culvert cutting in half happened. Now, keep in mind, that was one of the specific things the village went to the Court of Appeals the second time on. So this was directly them being pissed off that oh, you can't regulate culverts. Well, but if it was sawn in half, then well, I mean, well, if half of it is theirs, the Petrozzati's, well, then we can get them because we have local approvals, and then that'll ruin hers. And then we're gonna re-ditch the whole ditch with our special extra dirt mud, and then tell the DNR that it's all Village of Richfield dirt, and then we're never gonna shoulder the road again and continue to complain. Yes, Jim Healy, that's what's happening, and here it is. I don't know if Petrozzati's realized he was diming y'all out, but there it is, he dimed you out. Can't imagine he was very happy that he spent the money he spent trying to get me and all this other stuff, when it sounds like you're just coming up with ways to continue to harass me and my family. Because here's the rest of the story, guys. I'm gonna take a break from the, looking at the transcript real quick. Here's the rest of the story when it comes to the boundary dispute. I hate litigation. I don't want to litigate in perpetuity for the rest of my life. Okay. It's not fun. It's expensive. It's stressful. So I literally went to the Village of Richfield and I asked them, what can I do to avoid a lawsuit here? I don't want to lose an access point. I can clearly prove adverse possession, but instead of having these big legal battles, why don't I just move my driveway over a little bit? They can keep the 15 feet. I don't know. It seemed like a solution to me, right? They said, nope, I was only allowed one entry point. And well, I believed as the courts agreed, that no local approvals apply to my site anyways. So I kind of just let it go, continued using it the same way I always had. And they came and cut the culvert, tried to put up the fence, filed this lawsuit mysteriously right after losing in at the Court of Appeals. And then the other thing they did, well, maybe I'll get that into that in another episode, but I'm just going to be honest with you. Keep in mind, if you've listened to my other episodes, I'm going through divorce at the same time. We're having arguments over in court. We're litigating over property disputes and stuff. And there was a foreclosure action that was filed, and so then I filed Chapter 13, right, to basically help the situation, I don't know, right, because I didn't wanna lose the property, so they put a stay um, on the foreclosure, pending the Chapter 13. Well, that ends up getting dismissed, and one of the reasons it was dismissed was because the Petrozzati's filed a $70,000 claim, which put me over the threshold hold to qualify for Chapter 13. This is super geeky stuff, guys. Not my proudest moments either, but I am literally sharing this with y'all because it's the truth. It's what happened. Every time I turned around and try to find a way to work through all of these shenanigans and all of the bullshit, I'm slapped in the face with something different in another lawsuit, and go ahead, I invite you, go on CCAP, look at how many times I've been sued since starting this whole controversy with the Village of Richfield, and how bad it got after I won against the Village of Richfield. It's crazy, and I've been pleading for any law enforcement agency out there to help. I've literally used as much of my resources as I can to hold my local government accountable, but they're not gonna be satisfied until people start waking up and stop being so apathetic about what's going on at your local government. I've always said you don't have to like me, you don't have to like the pit, you don't have to agree with the decision, but it is the law. How is anybody in the Village of Richfield okay with this much of their tax dollars going for one lawsuit? And it's endless. These meetings, I've barely scratched the surface with all these crazy meetings. So now you've got my Without even without even notifying me, mind you, they're, like, working with my neighbor's attorneys and the village administrator and the village attorney at the village attorney's office trying to come up with ways. Well, they had the idea. Well, was it one of many idea? What? They're gonna they're gonna they're gonna sue us if we don't saw your culvert in half, Dana. The village of Richfield is gonna sue us. They're gonna sue us. We're gonna sue you. That's the most absurd, ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I don't know. Do you guys think that let me know what you think. I don't think the village of Richfield had any intention of suing the Petrozzadis. I think they came up with a cute little plan. That's my based on the fact that I believe the Petrozzadis family is where the wiener drawing art comes from. Pretty sure about that. Can't prove it, of course. Never got anybody on video drawing wieners on my property. Kind of glad I mean, as much as I want to catch them, I really don't want to see that image anyways. But they're silly, and these games they're juvenile. They're ridiculous. All because you're pissed off. It's crazy. It's a lot to process. It really is. I don't know if I want to go through much more of the transcript. So weird. So your understanding when you left that meeting is that the village of Richfield was going to file a lawsuit against both you and your wife and Ms. Zulik because the culvert had been installed without a permit? Correct. Did there come a time where you applied for a fence permit? Yeah, it was probably within a month or 2 of that, we applied for a fence permit. A month or 2 of what? I'm sorry. Sorry, after that meeting. Okay, the village meeting. Correct. And again, remind me when that was? That was in August of 2016 or 2017. Okay. And why did you decide to apply for a fence permit? We decided we really wanted to put up a fence. And why was that? Again, just we're distinguishing where our border is and also to keep the multiple animals that come onto our property off of our property. Well, maybe don't damage my fences and put cute little bait piles along your boundary line. And what are you referring to as multiple animals? Horses, dogs, goats, cats, chickens. And who owns these animals? Ms. Zulik. And how often are they on your property? The cats every day. Meow. Kitty cat. Stay off. That is definitely Dana Zulik's cat, guys. Dana Zulik has wild cats and they roam. Every cat on our property is Dana Zulik's cat. No other neighbor in the village of Richfield would allow a cat to be an indoor-outdoor cat or a barn cat. I mean, Humane Society's got a barn cat program, people. Like, they literally give people cats just to be in barns, and I don't know, do people put shock collars on them and keep come on, people. You're not upset about animals, you're upset, you're pissed off because you lost in court. They spent money trying to intervene in the Village of Richfield case through the Richfield Residents Against Dump. That didn't work. They sued me for this boundary dispute. That didn't work. But you know what works? They get an animal to cross the boundary and get their picture snapperooed by a trail cam. That's a $515 ticket for me times 100. I think the most recent calculations we were at like 63 official tickets altogether and then like 500 times that. So I don't know. I think we're like at 32,000. If anybody wants to go, there's a trial on Tuesday. We're having another "Why Did the Chicken Cross the Road" trial. Have you ever been to a trial like that? Why did the chicken cross the road? And what I usually say is, it's not a question of if the chicken crossed the road, ladies and gentlemen. The question I have here is not whether or not the chicken crossed the road. The question I have is, why did the chicken cross the road? And that, I think I labeled a whole episode that. It's my favorite question. Why did the chicken cross the road? Well, in our case, it's so that I get a $515 ticket. Dana, keep your chickens in. I know, guys. Gotcha. It's not about the chickens. What were the steps you took to get the fence permit? I went to the village hall, met with Joel Jaster, I believe is the inspector. There is a fee. And also, he said there was something we had to get from Washington County. I don't remember what that was actually labeled, but we had both the village permit and what we needed from Washington County. And what did you do after you got the fence permit? Well, we waited a while. I mean, it was just time to put up that big of a fence was going to be a while. It was over. That's 2017 over Thanksgiving. My sons were both going to be around and said, let's put up this fence. But first, we wanted to get rid of the culvert and the gate that were across this area. Okay. And the permit you had to pick up to install the fence, did that include anything about removing the culvert or gate? No. Okay. So what happened? So we cut the culvert in half at the property line going by. Guys, in the world of rational choices, I'm going to give this like 2. I mean, I could see, like, if you're, "Oh, I don't like my neighbor, I'm gonna go saw their culvert." I mean, okay. I can see feeling that way or expressing it amongst yourself in your mind. Okay, if you're me, nothing's in your mind, and I just sort of word vomit all the time and tell everybody everything I'm thinking, but, like, I would definitely say that out loud. I would be like, "Man, I'm so mad. We should, like, saw their culvert in half." I could see myself thinking something like that, right? But then, like, logic, reason, common sense, those goofy things start popping into my mind, and I think, "That's weird." I would actually take a blade on a tractor and go over in a boundary dispute and in this case, guys, it wasn't the Edward Scissorhands. You know, like with the fences, they're the Edward Scissorhands. This time, they were like, I don't know, what character uses a blade? I wish I was more into, like, those action movies. I feel like someone's gonna be like, "Dana, hello. There's, like, superheroes out there that have blades for hands." Well, that's what happened that day. I think I just accidentally kicked my microphone. I hope you didn't get a big toe in your face. Okay, so we cut the culvert in half at the property line going by to stick those in the ground. That was from the old 98 survey, which I also matched. We learned today matched the 2015 survey, and we cut the culvert in half, took that half of the culvert, threw it on to Miss Zulick's property. The gate was held up by two. It was a green gate that had kind of shape. It was held up by two white posts. With my tractor, I was able to pull the post out that's on our side, just swung the gate over and propped the post on her property as well. And who was present when you did this? My sons, Sam and Ellis. Anyone else? No. Was your wife present? No. Did you see the defendants during this removal of the culvert and the portion of the gate? No. What happened next? We removed them. We decided we're going to have lunch. We went to have lunch. We came back out with some fencing and fence posts and attempted to start erecting a fence. Okay, I'm going to stop you. How much time passed from the removal of the portion of the culvert and the fence, the gate, until you went back with the fence? Over an hour, hour and a half, I'd estimate. Okay, so approximately what time of day did you return? I would say 1:30 or 2. Okay, and then what happened? Well, as we were putting up the fence, while we were up there trying to figure out, because again, we were describing how rocky the soil is, it's hard to put in stakes. We were trying to come up with the best method to do so. Just put in the stakes. At that time, Mr. Gagno came out yelling at me and that I'm trespassing and he is calling the police and I better stay where I was. Who is Mr. Gagno? He is the gentleman in the back with the red tie. Okay, so he is in the courtroom today? He is in the court today? Yes. And does he have a first name? Jeff. And do you know Jeff Gagno? Well, just from, again, seeing him in public, or that was the first time I actually interacted with him. God forbid you, Doug Petrozades, God forbid that you actually get to know the people who you're spending so much time and money and energy on. Like, it's just weird to me. I've asked to talk to all these people. They say they fear for their safety and that I'm belligerent. So, I mean, I don't know. Oh, can I take another side note? I have to tell a story. So, I'm operating the dozer the other day and I'm listening to podcasts, and this podcast pops up, and they're like, how to deal with rude people. Oh, maybe the maybe the algorithm's switching, listening to my rant sometimes. How to deal with rude people. And one of the techniques is like staying silent and looking at someone for like 4 seconds with like, yeah. And I should have practiced that because a couple nights ago I went to talk to my friend. I was driving by um the American Legion in Hubertus, and a friend of mine was standing out there, and I stopped to say hi. And I've gone into this in another episode about, some things going on at the American Legion, all to do with the pit and the rumor mill and all that crap, Paul Craig, whatever. And the lady who ran me over in the driveway, Lynette Rake. Well, so I'm standing out there talking to my buddy, and all of a sudden Lynette Rake comes walking out of the, because she bartends there, and she comes walking out, and she like beeline straight to me. And she's just like with this look on her face. Like, why is this woman running across I don't wanna talk to you. I tried really hard, guys, to use that silence thing. Let's just say it's a work in progress. Yeah, it's a work in progress. So, let's go back to what we're talking about. What happened, Dana? Well, I asked her if she saw the episode about her running me over, and then I asked if she was ever gonna apologize. And, well, yeah, I didn't feel good about it, though. I really, during my podcast? Here. There's 2? Well, okay, but tomato, tomato. So, um, now you made me lose my train of thought. Um, so basically, I don't even remember where I was at. Oh, um, I literally can't. I was talking about what? We'll just lift her up and put her on the bed then. That's all she wants. She probably can't jump up right now. She just wants to be by the food. Yeah. Hey, look it! I got another watcher. Don't worry, I can't see who you are. Sometimes if I announce I have someone else watching, they're like, "Oh, can she see who's watching me?" No, I can't see. I can't. I can't tell who's watching. So, anyways, as much as I'd like to just let it go, it's kind of like frustrating, like she didn't need to come beelining towards me. I don't go out of my way to go talk to her. But if she comes to me, I'm going to say something. He kept repeating he was going to call the police, blah, 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 blah. Right when we got back up there, Ms. Zulik came out with her phone, pointed it at me, and telling me she's on blank blank, or I'm on Facebook Live and started recording and trying to tell me how I didn't have a permit and I wasn't allowed to put a fence up. What is Facebook Live? My understanding is, Facebook, you can send a message, everybody gets it. Live means it's going right, it's turning right as you have the camera on someone. So people can watch it as it's happening right. And then what happened? Again, it was just interesting how this was a disputed property, so I shouldn't be putting a fence on it, an area that already had been bulldozed by someone else, meaning her, meaning Ms. Zulik, and that I didn't have any right to be there and I didn't have a proper permit. How long does this videoing Facebook Live take? I'm going to say about 10 minutes. I'm not sure. I just finally got to the point where it's like, there is no gain for me to be here. No, right. You were supposed to go to court, sir. We're in a non self help state. You're not supposed to just. That was the solution. I walked over with the boys back more onto our property, called the police, made sure they were actually going to respond. So you called the police yourself? Yes. They said they had known about this, but I wanted to make sure because it was like 45 minutes that Mr. Gagne was saying he was calling the police before they got there. Oh, okay. Thanks for the text, guys. So you called the police yourself? Yes. They had said they known. Okay, we went through that. So I wasn't sure that he ever really did. Did believe me, if Jeff Gagnon said he called the police, I guarantee you, you can 101% of the time assume it's happening because he's Jeff Gagnon. Did you ever go back to installing the fence that day? No, because we thought we'd just wait for the police. It's not worth the aggravation to be here. Well, you didn't have to come over. You could have just gone to court. I didn't tell you anything different that day than I told you any other day, except for maybe it's a non self help state and you weren't supposed to do that. So, anyways, see if we have any comments. No comments. Well, if anybody has any questions, you're welcome to put them in the comments. I'm just going to spend maybe another 5 minutes or so here. I don't have that much more to go over. I just wanted to kind of touch base about the boundary dispute, and I want to keep these episodes at under an hour or so. But yeah, I mean that was basically the whole thing was Village of Richfield. There's not one interaction or case that the Village of Richfield hasn't seemed to touch, in my opinion. Right? It's like I'm having a boundary dispute with the neighbor, and there's the Village of Richfield with their like Jim Healy fingers in there. Like Jim, why? Like I just I know you're a busy guy. I just don't know why you got to spend so much time on something the courts told you to stop worrying about. And at this time during this issue, they had already told you to leave me alone. That you had no, but you had to come up with an idea, right? And then my culvert gets sawed in half. And then they don't even get a ticket for vandalism, damage to property, trespass. They don't get anything. So again, Tuesday, I believe it's Tuesday. I when I go on air again, I'll let you know for sure. But there's a jury trial. And the way I'm going to open it up is it's not a question of if the chicken crossed the road, ladies and gentlemen. The question here is why did the chicken cross the road? I had a long talk with the assistant district attorney today. He sent me an email asking for some documents. Got some other good news I'm not ready to share yet because I want to see where that plays out and I don't want to ruin my chances. I don't want to jinx anything out in the universe. And I've had other people that are going to start being guests reach out to me. I'm super excited about that. So hopefully, if things go the way I want, I'm gonna be able to go live and interview someone from Canton, Massachusetts, that's experiencing very similar things in their town, but over a much more high profile case. So, if she's watching, hi Jen. She said she would. I don't know if she will. I'd be so honored if she did. I try not to be so boring on these shows, and I would love to have more banter with people that are like minded, that have gone through similar experiences, so that we can support one another and start getting the message out. Because believe it or not, the issues that happen at our local level affect you every single day of your life for everybody. And if they can do it to me, they can do it to people like Erica Brewer in the town of Eagle. They can do it to Carla Whitcomb here in Richfield. Despite what your personal opinions are of people, it's never okay for a local government to abuse their power on the tax dollar, using your money to go after people after the courts have told them to stop. In my opinion, the village of Richfield, Jim Healy, John Jeffords, and John Macy are, I believe that they're criminals. I do. And that's why I'm going to go over that in the next episode. So, we're going to talk about why I believe that the local government has absolutely the amount of accountability they have is, they need more accountability. We need a way to hold our government accountable so that this doesn't happen to other people. And remember, your vote counts more at the local level than it will count for anything ever. Thank you for joining me tonight on Local Wars, and my dog wants me to let her out, so I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go. But thank you for spending this time with me, letting me share these documents. It really does help me process things, get them off my mind. Sometimes I trigger myself and I'm like, oh, I'm going down a dark hole. That's okay. We use our tools and we climb back out, right? So don't forget about the crisis line for everybody. We have it on every episode. So sometimes if I forget to mention it, it's always there for a reason. So you guys have a wonderful night tonight. And I'm going to be trying to do another live either tomorrow or the next day. I love each and every single one of you, whether you believe me or not. Bye.